Hello, this is Sheila from Stamping Wishes, and welcome to my studio. Today we're doing another card that's really a lot of fun. I've seen a lot of them out on Pinterest and different areas, and I thought I'm going to give it a try. I had a couple ideas. Well, this was the first one, just to run you through a little bit here. This was the first one I made, and I was using the second release Tags in Bloom, which I absolutely love this set, and this is what I made with it. It opens up and everything is right there, and then there's a place on the back where you can write your greeting to whoever you're sending it to. So I used Tags and Blooms, and I used the Flourishing Phrases, just a note, and thank you very much. Okay, so that was the first one I did, and then I decided I hadn't used High Tide in a long time, so I thought what a great card, masculine card this would be by using that. So this is the one I made with it, and I really like how it came out. And then of course on this one I'm debating on whether I really need to put an extra white one or not, because you can write on the back of this one. So anyway, there's that one, and I used the High Tide, which we're going to use again today. I also used By the Dot because I wanted to use in here, I'll show you real quick. On the framelits portion of it, I used these two oars, and that's what made the crisscross in the inside salutation. So we're going to use that. And I've actually gone ahead and cut those out right here, and we'll sponge them a little bit later, so I'm going to set them off to the side. I also used the Happy Birthday out of Peaceful Moments. And so let's go ahead and talk about this one here. I did use out of scraps, let's pull these off, I'll show you for the layering in the front. I used this size, which is one of your smaller sizes above this one here. And so I went ahead and used that frame for it. So we'll just put that back over here. And then I also, for the blue, which goes next, I brought the size that's right above it into it, so we'll put that there. And then for the last one, which is the blue, the balmy blue, because we use not a navy, and balmy blue, I'll get it out there. So that layer is there. So that I use the Stitch nestled label dies to with scrap paper to do that portion of it. Also with the scraps, I did use the smaller one of those dies to put my Happy Birthday on, and then for the two oars. Okay, so for your designer paper, I'm using today the Come Sail Away Designer Series paper. This has been one of my favorites, and especially in the line of a masculine card, or really anyone would love getting this type. But this time, instead of choosing this particular designer paper, I decided to go with the striped. And on this you'll need, and you could actually use either side, but for the color scheme we'll use this side. But you want your piece to be, it's 4 inches this way and 3 inches this way. And then for this piece we want it 4 by 5 1/4, and then we want this piece to be 5 1/2 by 4 1/4, and that'll fit right into there after we do this. So let's go ahead and stamp first, just so that we can let those be drying. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our stamping done. We're going to do the background first, which is in our Smoky Slate. So let's get that out, and we'll take and stamp up our lighthouse. And this is the two stamping, so we want to make sure we get our solid one down first with whatever color scheme we want to do, and I'm using the Smoky Slate as my undercolor. And then for the details I'm using Night of Navy. So let's see if we get that where we need it. Maybe one more inking on that, just to kind of give it a solid, more solid I should say. Let's hold this down. Okay, that looks good. So let's go ahead and wipe this off, and then I'm going to remove it because I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but sometimes what I do to help me identify where things are that you really can't see, and that would be to make a little pencil marking. So what I did was to make a pencil marking that tells me that the edge of my lighthouse goes down there. And if you look real closely here, I've got the tip of it going there. So we're going to see if it lays over correctly. And it looks pretty good, but let me do this. Let me go what I like to do is take see how I'm lining up that very tip there? To me, that's probably the most important piece that you line up, because the rest of it will balance if you get that piece right. So I'm going to go ahead and go over, and if you see my pencil mark, it lines up still very well with this. So let's hope that that is a good lineup and that we haven't moved this. Okay, so let's go ahead and I think it shifted a little bit, so I'm going to put it here and test it one more time just to make sure it looks like it's where it needs to be. Okay, I think that looks about right. I've used this stamp so much that used to it was much easier to line up because I could see through it, but it's gotten so dark and stained that it makes it a little bit hard to see through to what I've stamped on the other side. My Night of Navy is really squishy, and I just got blue ink all over me, so I want to make sure I get it off. Okay, let's hope that this one matches up like I'm hoping it does. That looks good. Let's just re-stamp it to get more of the details into it. That looks good. I'm going to call it a day with that one. All right, so now that we've got that stamped, we'll set that aside and let it be drying while we start showing you how to fold and prepare your other part of your card. Well, while we're here, let's go ahead and, since I said we're going to do our stamping, let's go ahead and do our stamping on this one here. And I am using the Sierra Sand with it. I thought it was a good blend, having that sandy look on it. And I always like to kind of stamp, make sure my stamp is doing well. And then hopefully I don't get my hair right into the middle of all this, but let's stamp it, hold it, and come up. Perfect. Okay. I also have my sponge out, so let's go ahead and do just a little bit of sponging around the edges just to kind of give it that antiquish rustic look, which I would imagine any of the wood that might come from the beachy area would have that kind of a look to it. And let's do the same thing with our oars, so we have a nice rustic look with them, worn look I should say maybe. And this, because it's delicate on these edges, usually I do the kind of circular motion, but I'm just really trying to get some of the color on there just so it kind of pops off of the rest of it. So I'm not going to do my normal blending that I do in circular motion that I teach the proper way of doing, but I do use it this way for delicate pieces. All right, so that should take care of that. All right, so let's go ahead and get busy on the card portion. All right, so you'll need your trimmer for this. And even though I've trimmed all of the pieces ahead of time, we do want to be able to use the scoring piece of that. So make sure that this is out of the way. On your 3-inch side, you want to move it down to your 2-inch, and then you're going to score like so. So that'll give you a 1-inch. So you could either line it up at 1 inch here or line it 2 inch here. It'll work the same way either way. Just make sure that you have your scoring blade and not your trimming blade. Okay, so now we've got those there. So let's go ahead and bring our bone folder over, and we're going to give it a nice crisp. And I tell you what, since we're finished stamping, let me see if my other side, nope, that's worse than that side. I should have brought me an extra clean one because I've stamped all over this, but you'll have to excuse my mess there, the sponging, okay? So once you do this, what you're going to do is bring the peak of this longer, the 2-inch piece here, and you're going to bring it and edge it right up along the fold side without going over that crease line, okay? And then you want to be able to do the same thing on this side here so that you peek these together and get you a nice, again, fold without going over the peaks. If you happen, which it looks like I may with this one, if you happen to go over a little bit, I'm going to show you how we're going to trim that real quick. Alright, so see right here on this edge how it looks. We're just going to take some scissors and trim that up, and it will not show. Sometimes I can get it right with the fold without any issues, and other times I'm right over the edge. And what you're trying to get is to make sure that when you're, make sure I don't cut my fold line here, that doesn't interfere with your fold line. So let's snip it just a little bit. Just a little bit more. Okay. So when it comes across here, let me make sure that peaks right. Okay. When it comes across, it lays flat. You want to make sure you have burnished it real well. So let's go ahead and do the other side. And again, we're going to come together. And I think what I'm going to do before I crease this one is see how we're doing on this one here and see if we can't crease them kind of down together. This paper is the thicker or nicer type DSP, so it has a tendency to want to not fold as quickly and easily as you'd like it to, but it does, and it's beautiful to work with. So, okay, again, I look like I'm a little bit over, just a tad, so I'm going to trim that off real quick. And some of this comes from, I notice when I use my this cutter, I seem to be more precise than I do when I'm using my one-arm guillotine type. Because I was doing several pieces, I did use my guillotine, and that's probably what caused some of that overage there, are not being exactly trimmed. So, because I've noticed with our new trimmer that we definitely get a nice cut with that one, and precise as well. So then, just for the sake of doing it quickly, I'm going to use my snail as a way to bring these over and bring them down. You only want to do these on this edge here. You do not want to do that on the flap that we have there. I'll show you in a minute what we're going to do with that. Okay, so now in your two base cards here that you've got, this one is going to go, because this is our smaller one, this is the one that measures the 4 by 5 1/4. So this is going to come right in there, and I did nip that, so I'm going to just go ahead and kind of pull it out of the way and trim it. There. Okay, so we want to bring this, because when it fits here, it's not going to show on the back, okay? So go ahead and place your Snell adhesive. And I like to just kind of bump it up against the edge of the fold line, bring it over this way, and then close it that way. Okay? And we'll do the same thing with this one. Now when you're using directional paper as I did, just make sure that when you cut, that you're cutting the way you want your design to go. And I didn't want mine to go, the stripes go across, I want them to go a long way, so that's why I had to be careful that I cut both of my pieces in the direction I wanted them to go. Okay, so let me see, I had two pieces here. I want to just see if I had one that was, nope, they're both the same size. I'm just going to test the measurement on this one though. This one, just a hair. I don't even know that it's enough that it'll trim it any. But like I said, that's the difference, and there was probably a 1/16 of an inch difference, and that's the difference in using a different cutter. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that we had it correct there. All right, before I like to seal this portion down to the back here, I want to make sure that I get my insides in correctly. So the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and bring our little sign in. And because we're going to have that over, for example, this is going to come over and I'm going to have that centerpiece there, I want to try and make it as much in the center as I can. And even when I do my oars, I want to make sure that I bring my oars in a little bit tight so that we make sure that we don't have them sticking out from the front scenery. In fact, we may go ahead, I was looking for, there it is, right in front of me. I was looking for my silicone so we can do that. Let's go ahead and layer that. That way I can get a nice feel for how everything's going to be sitting on this. Okay, so we have this layer that'll go next. And I did bring my lighthouse up. I brought these two. Let's see, we need to bring this down just a little bit about there. Okay, so I did adhere these two together, but this one I wanted it to have a little bit of dimension, so I brought some of my black dimensionals into the back of it. And we'll do that just to give it some side support as well. And let's flip these off. But there's so many ideas running through my mind, and I imagine by the time you look at this, you're going to have the same thing happening to you as to how many cute stamp sets we have that would go so well with this particular design. Now keep in mind, because this is going to come up, you do not want to cover both ends. It's just going to be one end, okay? So I'm going to flip this over, and right here at the tip of it is where I'm going to bring my adhesive. It's right in this area here. And then I'm going to lay it back down, and I'm going to go ahead right here, because I can't see if I went down far enough. I'm going to put it right there, and then we're going to lay this right in the center, and I'm using actually my diagonal lines there to help me line that up. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, so then for the inside, as I mentioned, I want to kind of lay this first, just a dry fit, and see if I were to lay them about there, whether this covers, and it does. So that gives me a good idea of where it needs to be. I brought out my silicone mat because if you don't have one of these, they're really a must in your stamping and putting things together, because whenever, see how the adhesive stuck to my silicone mat and only came off where I needed it to on the oars. And these are real easy to clean up afterwards. And what I do is, if some of the adhesive wants to come off on the edge, which it sometimes does, I just wait until I get it on, and it usually will rub right off. So I think these two areas look good there. And this is what I'm talking about. I can just take my finger and the excess adhesive, and if you still have any of your erasers that we used to sell for adhesive, you can also still get those at Michael's, but Stampin' Up! Also used to sell those. So one last thing that we need to do here to top this off is use some of our, or one of our little, so let's see if we want to use another one of these or change it up a little bit maybe and put us an anchor down on this end. And I think I will use an anchor. Now, one of the things that I probably should have done if I hadn't been thinking, if I'd been thinking straight on this, is a couple of things. One is because you do have a hole here and you do have layers, I could have even brought this up to a design here in the center, taken my brad and placed through the one layer, and then you wouldn't see it, but the nice little round silver brad would have looked nicely over the little hole that you've got there. Or you can have it come down at the bottom here, and we could have done the same thing as put a little brad there. Now you can still take and put your brad in afterwards and then trim them off, but for the sake of what we're doing today, and my brads aren't anywhere near me, I don't want to stop and have to run and get them. I'm just going to go ahead and use a glue dot and place it on there. And I might put a little piece of a jewel of some sort on there a little bit later. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our glue dot off of here and take it to the back. And then let's go ahead and put one on the bottom as well. But that kind of gives you some ideas on how you could attach yours, and if you wanted to make it really unique and different. So let's go ahead and put the anchor at the very bottom here. And we have us a card. Isn't that gorgeous? Okay, so let's go ahead and get our backing on. And here we go, and look, isn't that a beautiful card? It just so simple, so quick, so easy. Okay, so here's our card. Very simple, very easy. Nice masculine card for a birthday or anything that you'd want. A Father's Day would be great. Let's bring in our other ones now. Let's see if I can get them all in here. These are the 3 designs that I did, and I know that you will have as much fun coming up with your own design and your own DSP. And until next time, God bless and happy creating.